Hey, Dog Nation, welcome into bowl season. My name is Brandon Adams, and this is Go With The Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews. And if you've, of course, been joining us all season long, you know what we do here. But if this is your first time checking out the program, let me give you a little bit of an idea. Each week during the season, we pick games against the spread. You hear from an entire collection of Dog Nation experts, Mike Griffith, Jeff Sintel, Connor Riley, myself. Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers have their chance to weigh in, and then Dari Payro from R.S. Andrews gets a chance to decide if he wants to join the consensus, or as we like to say it around here, go with the flow and make his picks. We hope you all join in to play with us. We've had a fun time this year, although I guess some of us more fun than others. Me, not quite so much over the entirety of the season. In fact, before you listen to our picks and decide if you want to align yourself with them, let me give you an idea of how we've done thus far this year. Here are the standings heading into what is our final show of the year, where we'll pick a good number of these bowl games. Connor, our most recent show, did go 6-3. That puts him at 76-54-1 for the year. Dari, who got off to an incredibly hot start during the year, kind of fallen off the pace a bit as of late, 4-5 last week, to put him still at a very, very nice clip, 70-60-1 on the year. Me, good week last week, making the best of what's been a bad season. I am just 60-70-1 against the spread thus far this season. So those are the standings today. It'll be not just a week's worth of games. We'll kind of look at the bowl season in its entirety. We will pick 10 games, including both the spread and the over-under for Georgia in the Sugar Bowl against the Baylor Bears. And Dari Payro, as I welcome you in, I'll ask you pretty much the question I believe I ask you just about each and every week of how do you feel about this bowl slate and how much fun are you looking forward to the bowl season?
Yeah, there's definitely some really good games. I'm excited to watch, especially that playoff matchup with Clemson and Ohio State. I mean, that's going to be two heavyweights going at it. So there's definitely some good matchups, and I'm excited. Some good football.
Yeah, I'm excited about it as well, and looking forward to talking about it. And why don't we go ahead and get that going here? And as we do, I'll remind you that as it has been all season long, Go With The Flow is brought to you by R.S. Andrews. You know, any kind of air conditioning, heating, plumbing, or electric need you might have, R.S. Andrews can take good care of you. And I realize this time of year, you've got a lot of folks coming over to stay in your house for Christmas or New Year's, whatever the holiday. That's the last thing you need is some sort of electrical issue, not to be working the way that it's supposed to, or not have hot water flowing out of your shower. You want to take good care of your guests. And so if you're dealing with one of those issues, just know this, R.S. Andrews can put a smile on your face, because story after story, they've been delivering smiles. So make sure you check them out online at rsandrews.com. And we will check out the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans on January the 1st as the Georgia Bulldogs play as a 6.5-point favorite against the runners-up from the Big 12, the Baylor Bears. Mike Griffith, as you've done all season long, start us off with your thoughts on how the Sugar Bowl plays out.
In the Sugar Bowl, I got Georgia winning that game 24-21 over Baylor Bears.
So Mike, looking like Run DMC, goes Baylor Bears as an upset pick, at least against the spread. Jeff Sintel, Dog Nation's recruiting insider, how do you feel?
I'm going to take Georgia in the points there. I think Georgia gets right with a revamped offensive line against a Big 12 foe.
Jeff Riverside's Mike, he takes the Georgia Bulldogs. Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers, maybe bad memories of the Sugar Bowl a year ago. Maybe depressing the percentage here. 77% do take Georgia against Baylor, but maybe a little less than we've seen from some Georgia fans this season when it comes to picking this game. Connor, this was a spot last year where a Big 12 foe gave Georgia all it wanted. Georgia has seemingly said the right things about being focused for this game this year, but difficult to know what those words translate to when it comes to actions. How do you feel about Georgia as a 6.5-point favorite in the Sugar Bowl?
Hate it. I actually think Baylor might be one of the best picks this whole bowl slate. Baylor, 43 sacks during the regular season. Georgia going to be without 3 starting offensive linemen in Andrew Thomas, Isaiah Wilson, and Ben Cleveland. A lot of questions about the motivation of this team, especially given what we saw a season ago in this very same stadium against arguably a worse Texas team than I think this Baylor team is. Until Georgia goes out and shows that they want to be in these bowl games and play well here and actually, do something with it, I don't feel comfortable recommending them at all. Give me Baylor here. I think Baylor wins outright.
Yeah, one of the things you're going to hear me say a lot on today's show is that preseason prognostications for bowl games are typically more predictive for the outcomes than the most recent polls or the most recent projections. From that standpoint, Georgia, obviously, from a preseason standpoint, was way more, I guess, revered than what Baylor is. Right now, the playoff top 25 sees this as a battle of the number 5 team versus the number 7 team, but the preseason poll saw this as number 3 Georgia against unranked Baylor. So over the course of a season, Baylor has either gotten way better, or there's a lot of recency bias making folks think Baylor is better than it really is. The problem here for me on that is I can't buy Georgia in this bowl spot, given the fact we saw the Dogs play bad in this same venue a year ago against a much more high-profile opponent in Texas. I actually do think, from a defensive standpoint, Baylor is quite good, and given the fact they've rushed the passer and done some things like that this year, the fact that Georgia has major questions along its offensive line scares me to death in terms of making an official pick on Georgia. Obviously, I'm a fan of the Dogs. I want to see them win the game, but I don't buy them in the spot. I just don't. So I'm going to take Baylor plus the 6.5. That puts the flow on the side of the Big 12 underdog. Dar, you want to go with the flow and take Baylor?
I'm not. I'm going to take Georgia only because, the uncertainty at quarterback for Baylor. I think that puts Georgia's defense in a really good spot, and they should have a field day against that. I think it's going to be a defensive game. And I give that edge to Georgia. I also think they should have some motivation to win the Sugar Bowl, considering last year's debacle and lack of focus and effort. I think Kirby will remind these guys to take these type of games seriously. So I like them in a little bit of redemption, and I think the defense will get them this cover.
So we're off and running here. Fun pick from Dari Payro. Optimistic about Georgia more so than Connor or I either one are. So obviously I hope I'm wrong on this, and I actually hope Dari Payro from R.S. Andrews ends up being right. And we've got 9 more games to pick, including coming back to the Sugar Bowl before we're done. I will admit one housekeeping thing. I kind of submitted these games in sort of a weird order, so there's very little rhyme or reason to the order in which we're going to pick these games. They are not in chronological order in terms of the date, nor in terms of the significance, but I believe we're moving on next to the Cotton Bowl in Dallas between Memphis, without its coach, Mike Norvell, who's on his way to Florida State, and Penn State, one of the teams that kind of always found a way to be highly ranked in the Big Ten, despite the fact they really didn't beat much of anybody all season long. The Nittany Lions are 6.5 points favorites here over the champions from the American Athletic Conference, the Memphis Tigers. So with that in mind, Mike Griffith, you can go first in terms of how you think the Cotton Bowl plays out.
Cotton Bowl, Penn State is a 6.5 point favorite. My prediction on that game, Memphis 30, Penn State 27. Upset.
So Mike is on the side of Memphis plus the 6.5. Jeff Sintel, what about you on the Cotton Bowl?
Give me the 6.5 points. I like the Nittany Lions all the way.
So you guys caught me on camera there for a moment. So Jeff goes on the side of Penn State, so split decision amongst our two scribes there on different sides of that with the Cotton Bowl. How about Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers? 65% do take the favorite out of the Big Ten. They do take Penn State. Connor, you got a strong feeling on this one going to be played here in Dallas?
I don't have a strong feeling. I never like these kind of games where, a coach isn't there, because Mike Norvell obviously is not there at Memphis, and you wonder, sort of what the motivations might be. However, I have a rule that I like to stick to in gambling. If there are two teams and one team I believe is better, and the better team is favored by 6.5, I'm going to just take them on general principle. So I do think Penn State's better. I don't know what we're going to see out of this Memphis team now that Norvell is not there and part of his staff is not there preparing for this bowl game. And, I did fade Memphis 2 straight weeks against Cincinnati, and those were both winners. I'm going to pick them against them again, this time with Memphis as an underdog. Give me the Nittany Lions here in the 6.5.
So here is the philosophy and the logic I'm going to use for virtually every single pick we're going to make here today. I didn't really go this way with Georgia Baylor, but for most of the rest of the games, can I read just a couple sentences if you don't mind? This comes from a guy named Ed Fang of the Power Rank, who's a respected analytics guy, kind of a college professor type. Here's what he says about college football in the bowl season. He says, the preseason polls might seem worthless for making predictions. The humans of the AP and the coaches have no games upon which to base their ballots. It's more than reasonable, it would seem, to wait until later on in the season to look at those polls. However, he says it's a mistake. The preseason AP and coaches polls have remarkable predictive powers, including during bowl season. Now, here are the numbers he gives. This is what was originally written in 2015, but the numbers the last few years have, if anything, have gotten more strong in favor of using preseason polls to predict bowl games. Ed Fang from the Power Rank writes that over the last 10 years, a sample of 339 bowl games, The preseason coaches poll predicted 59.9% of bowl game winners. If you use just that alone, you'd be profitable with your bowl game picks. He says the AP poll didn't do much worse, picking 58.8% of the winners. You could never do this by using the most recent poll, but by using the preseason poll, oftentimes you get a predictive winner of who's going to win these games. So when I make my picks, what I'm going to be looking at is not just what we think about these teams now, but what we thought about them during the preseason. And if our thinking has changed, I mean the consensus thinking, then why has it changed? For instance, look at the Cotton Bowl here for a moment. Right now, you'd be told that this is number 10 Penn State against number 17 Memphis. But the truth is, back before the season began, we saw a much larger gap between these two teams. The preseason poll in the AP had Penn State as the number 15 team in the country. Memphis was in the also receiving votes category, the 40th team in the country based on the number of votes that it got in the AP preseason poll. I don't see anything we've seen from this season to make me think that gap has shrunk as much as the current poll suggests that it does. As Connor said, if you watch Memphis games closely, on this show we did, they weren't covering big games late in the season, including the AAC title game to a Cincinnati team that did come within an eyelash of winning. So without its coach, using the preseason prognostication as our guide here, there's actually a pretty significant gap between the Nittany Lions and the Tigers. So I'll take Penn State minus the 6.5. That puts the flow on the side of the Nittany Lions. And Dari, with that in mind, you want to go with the flow?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the flow. I'm going to take Penn State. That's interesting with the using the preseason rankings and polls for picking. That is good news for the Georgia game, though.
That's a good point.
That would put them as to cover that game and win. I think this is going to be a fun game between Penn State and Memphis. I think there's going to be some scoring. Penn State's kind of in a tough situation in this game because it's really no upside for them. They're playing a non-Power 5 team that just lost its head coach and a ton of positional coaches. So if they win, it's kind of expected. But if they lose, it's kind of an embarrassment. So it's a lot of downside. I think all the pressure's on Penn State. But I just think they're a better team. They're more talented. And their defense is going to make enough plays in this game for them to win and cover.
Yeah, I think that's pretty well said. And I actually think this could, even without Norvell, could be a pretty fun game to watch there. Let's now transition and talk about the two playoff games. Now, while we're talking about those second and third as opposed to either first or last, that's probably not the best organization on my part, but I do want to hit both these games. Starting with one played here in Atlanta, the Peach Bowl between Oklahoma and LSU on the basis of how it handled Georgia and how it's handled its business all season long, sees itself sitting as a 14-point favorite. Of course, there are suspensions on the sides of the Sooners. There's an injury situation to be watched when it comes to Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the running back of the LSU Tigers. So personnel are going to eventually factor in the outcome once this game is finally played. But for now, based on what we know, LSU as the 2-touchdown favorite. And Mike Griffith, you can begin with your thoughts.
A 14-point favorite. I like LSU to win that game, but not cover the spread. LSU 41, Oklahoma, and Jalen Hurts 30.
So Oklahoma plus the points for Mr. Griffith. He has been an underdog picking machine now for the last few weeks. How about Jeff Sintel? Where are you at, Sooners and the Bengal Tigers?
Oklahoma has a lot of key starters out in this game, key contributors at the very least. LSU has a big line, that 14 points. Rumors of how effective or even whether or not Clyde Edwards-Helaire will be in the game. Well, if you notice, Clyde Edwards-Helaire wasn't in the Georgia-LSU game that much at all, and they rolled over the Bulldogs. I don't think the missing man formation is going to help a lot for LSU. I still like them to beat Oklahoma in a big way.
So Jeff is on LSU. How about Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers? No doubt impressed by what they saw LSU in the last game that Georgia played, and they'll use that to the tune of a little bit more than a 2-1 margin to take LSU here. 69% do take LSU to cover against Oklahoma in the Peach Bowl, one of the two college football playoff semifinals. Connor, you got a strong feeling on LSU and Oklahoma?
I do. So traditionally in the playoffs, there's always been about one blowout or at least multi-touchdown win.
Yeah.
I think this game is just so easy to circle and look at it. Yes, there is the injury to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. There's a hamstring issue. We won't know what his availability is going to be for that game. But Oklahoma lost their best pass rusher in Ronnie Perkins, and this is an Oklahoma team whose defense was already going to be up against it and struggling anyway. I think LSU could name its score in this game. You saw last year, Oklahoma came out, got boat raced in the first half, down 28-0 to Alabama. Oklahoma, despite, I believe this being their fourth time in the college football playoff, they've lost in the first round in all three games. And I just think they're a really bad matchup for this LSU team. I know 14 points is a lot. I'm glad it's at 14 and not say 14 and a half.
Yeah.
Because of that, give me the Tigers. Go Tigers.
So this is a different pick than I expected to be making, but I feel confident enough to say it. I'm actually going to take Oklahoma, and let me see if I can kind of, come up with my reasoning why. First of all, the CFP committee sees this as a closer game than Vegas does. Vegas has got it at 14 points, but obviously the committee has this as the number 1, number 4 teams in the country. To go back and harken back to the preseason poll that I was mentioning before, these two teams were also viewed to be close in the preseason poll there as well. Oklahoma, the preseason number 4 in the AP. LSU, the preseason number 6. So two teams thought to be close at the beginning of the season. Two teams the committee sees as close enough to be matched in a playoff game at the end of the season. It's Vegas here who's the outlier by the 14-point number. Now, I'd have a tendency to trust Vegas in this because of how battle-tested LSU is with the schedule that it's played and the quality wins that it's accumulated along the way. However, there's one nagging thing that I can't quite let go of, and it's enough for me to take a flyer on Oklahoma as the underdog in this game. That LSU is essentially going to try to go into Atlanta and play a style in which Oklahoma is really, really comfortable. Now, when Georgia played these Sooners in the Rose Bowl a couple of years ago, Georgia didn't want to try to match them point for point, possession for possession. But that's what LSU wants to do. I think playing into the hands of the Sooners won't be enough for Lincoln Riley's team to win this game, but enough to keep it close, I think it will. Connor's right. We've seen more blowouts in the college football playoff semifinals than maybe you realize, maybe you remember. This one, at least according to Vegas, would be kind of veering in that direction. But the fact that LSU is going to try to win comfortably, playing a style that Oklahoma is used to playing, that to me is enough to find a way for Oklahoma to keep this close. So believe it or not, different than I thought I might be doing, I'm taking Oklahoma plus the 14. However, the flow is on the side of LSU. Dar, you want to go with the flow?
Yeah, I'm going to roll with LSU. I would really like if you could have got this at 13.5,
yeah,
under that 14. But, I'm going to take LSU. I think their offense is just too much for Oklahoma's defense to match up with.
Yeah, I think that, ultimately this is one of those games where I think from a money line standpoint or just a pick of the winner, majority of the folks obviously going to take LSU. It's the point spread obviously makes this pretty interesting. Let's go to the other playoff semifinal game here.
The other thing on there, Brandon, I also like LSU because, they're playing to get back to New Orleans.
That's a good point.
So that final game is there. They're going to have that motivation. I think they're going to be marching back there in style, waiting for their opponent.
No, I think that's a really good point, that knowing that spot in New Orleans, the Superdome for the national championship game, a chance to really play in front of a hostile home crowd if they can win this game, a lot of motivation for LSU to be sure. Other playoff semifinal game is in Arizona. It's the Fiesta Bowl, two teams that have met in playoff games before. Clemson taking on Ohio State. Ohio State's the 2-point underdog here. Mike Griffith, your thought on the Tigers and the Buckeyes?
Ohio State, a 2-point underdog against Clemson. I don't think they're going to cover that. I've got Clemson winning the game 27-20 over the Buckeyes.
So Mike goes Clemson here as the favorite in Arizona. How about Jeff Sentau?
2-point underdog against Clemson. Give me those 2 points. I think Ohio State's going to win that football game.
So we're split here amongst our riders a lot. Jeff going on the side of Ohio State. Dog Nation Daily, listeners and viewers. How do you feel about the Fiesta Bowl? 59% do take Clemson, so by a 2-1 margin, the favorite has the nod for now. Connor, I think this is a really fun game, and obviously for both these teams, on paper it seems like a much tougher trek to the national championship because the general thought is that Ohio State, Clemson, LSU, kind of a level above what Oklahoma or any other team in America is right now. So that should make the Fiesta Bowl awfully fun. Do you have a pick?
Well, I have to have a pick. The last time these two teams played in Glendale, Arizona, no less, I predicted that Ohio State was going to run away with it and win by a couple of touchdowns, try to, look smarter than I was. The reality, Clemson beat the doors off that Ohio State team, 31-0 that day, and it wasn't even that close. Obviously, I think these two teams are a lot more equally matched now. But I'm going to go with Clemson here. I just trust them a little bit more. This is easily going to be the biggest game Justin Fields as a starter has ever played in. Trevor Lawrence has sort of been in games like this before against opponents like an Ohio State. this is the first time Fields has really gone up against a team of this caliber where he's going to have to be the guy and make the plays in there in this game. And this game opened at Ohio State -1. Ohio State actually opened as a favorite here, and it was quickly bet to Clemson being the favorite. Yeah. I know, it's not necessarily smart money, but there's a feeling I have about Clemson. I think this Clemson team is going to end up winning the national championship this year, and 2 points isn't enough to sway me to pick the Buckeyes.
So same logic on this game I've been using for a lot of these, that the preseason poll, a little bit different look on this than the current poll has. Current poll, Playoff Top 25, sees this as number 2 versus number 3. However, preseason AP poll saw this as number 1 Clemson against number 5 Ohio State. Now, over the course of the last few games, or last season's worth of games, we've seen Ohio State collect what we think of as resume-building wins. We, for the most part, have seen Clemson beat up on what we think of as weak competition. Therefore, maybe we're inflating Ohio State, maybe we're deflating Clemson. I'm going to trust the preseason poll on this, though, that still saw Clemson on paper at the beginning of the year as the slightly better team. 2 points, not a huge number one way or another, but I'm going to trust the preseason prognostication and not get caught up in the recency bias, even though Ohio State's probably been the most dominant team in the country. Before the season began, we thought Clemson was better, and we've really not seen anything, I think, to make us think Clemson's a bad team. Maybe we don't validate them by weak competition, but they certainly haven't had a whole lot of reasons to be criticized for the way they've played this season. So from that standpoint, minus the 2, I will take Clemson, and that puts the flow on the side of the Tigers. Dari, do you want to go with the flow?
Going with the flow. Ohio State looks like a team destined to win it all, but Clemson is 28-0. They're the defending national champs. Clemson is the first defending national champ of 1966 to open the season as number 1, go undefeated, and drop in the ranking.
Great number.
Dabo's tapped into that disrespect. He's using it as fuel. He has the team playing with that chip on its shoulder. They're showing it on the field. They have the experience in these type of games. They got everything going for them. I think they're just going to take care of business, and they're going to get to 29-0 and a chance to repeat.
Yeah, boy, I think it's going to be a fun game. Strong opinions here a little bit on both sides. Obviously, a lot of Clemson love from those of us on the show right now, but a lot of fun between these two teams. Let's go down the trough here a little bit, and we'll get back to some bigger games before we're done. Let's go to Nashville, Tennessee for the Music City Bowl coming up. I'm going to give you a pick on this one. Let me also remind you that Go With The Flow is presented by R.S. Andrews. And, it was freezing cold in my house last night, and I'm guessing for many of you outside it was very much the same way. A reminder that if your heating system, if you're concerned it might not make its way through the winter to come, or if you're just wondering if it's safe for you and your family, one of the best ways to get peace of mind when it comes to that is the $99 Mega Furnace Safety Check that my friends at R.S. Andrews can do for you. They can help get your system back to factory fresh specs and just also give you the comfort to know that your system is kind of ready to go, and it's going to keep your family warm, but it's also going to keep you and your family safe. So check out rsandrews.com to find out more about that Mega Furnace Safety Check. It's just $99, and R.S. Andrews will take good care of you because story after story, they've been delivering smiles, and they can deliver one for you, but you've got to check them out online at rsandrews.com. So games like this I actually really like. Two teams that ought to be pretty excited about playing in a game like this. Louisville, certainly new era under Scott Satterfield, one of the coaches that really probably got more out of his players than anybody in America did this season. Against Joe Moorhead, Mississippi State, my guess is Bulldogs fans don't feel quite as great about Moorhead as Cardinals fans do about Satterfield here in the moment. But nonetheless, it is Mississippi State who's a 4.5-point favorite in this game coming up during the holiday season in Nashville. So with that in mind, Mike Griffith, your thought on Mississippi State and Louisville.
Music City Bowl, Mississippi State and Louisville. Mississippi State a 4.5-point favorite. I got Mississippi State winning that game 23-20. Louisville covers.
So it is cards for Mr. Griffith there. He takes Louisville as the underdog in the Music City Bowl. Jeff Sintel, how about you?
Gosh. Man, somebody in Nashville is going to have a good time watching this game. I don't know who it's going to be, though, but I like Louisville in this game over the Fighting Joe Moorheads.
Yeah.
So he also goes Cardinals on that. You can tell by the look on his face that he's really excited about picking the Music City Bowl. But listen, these are the kinds of games that make bowl season. It's these kinds of Nashville, great place to host both these teams. I'm sure you have fans from both sides coming here to have a good time. Mississippi State's not going to turn their nose up at any bowl trip. Louisville, after what that program has been through, probably very much the same way. I think this one's pretty fun. Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers, how you feel about it? 61% do take Mississippi State here. So, Connor, a little bit of Mississippi State love from the audience after a whole lot of Louisville talk from both of our riders. Where do you come down on this game?
This game stinks. This is why this game is why people say there are too many bowl games. I'm going to try and keep this brief. Mississippi State is awful. They are truly awful. I don't think they deserve to be in a bowl game, regardless of what their 6-6 record is. If Elijah Moore doesn't pee like a dog and Mississippi State's or Ole Miss's kicker doesn't miss an extra point, Mississippi State doesn't even go to a bowl game. Joe Moorhead's probably out of a job. Give me Louisville here. I think they're more excited to be here. They want to be here. It's a big deal to them after going 2-10 this year. And reminder, this Mississippi State team is awful.
So I could not like Mississippi State more in this game. To me, this is one of the plays of bowl season for the exact same reason I've been saying before. If we believe the preseason rankings are predictive, and the math guys will tell you they are, there's a huge, huge gap between where Mississippi State is viewed to be now compared to where it was at the beginning of the season. Believe it or not, based on total number of votes received for the AP poll before the season began, Mississippi State was number 28 in the country. There's obviously not 28 teams ranked, but they were a third team on the also receiving votes category. Louisville nowhere to be found. Now you sort of see this as a relatively close game where Mississippi State's just a 4.5-point favorite, but a huge gap before the start of the season. I'm going to trust what we thought we knew back then versus the recency bias we fallen plague to now. I actually really like Mississippi State a lot here. They're not a good team, but you know what? There's going to be about half the bowl games won by teams that aren't very good. So from that standpoint, I like the Bulldogs here a lot. That puts the flow, though, still on the side of Louisville by a 3-2 margin. So, Dari, which direction you want to go? You want to go with the flow and take Louisville?
Yeah, I'm going with the flow here and taking Louisville. I mean, Mississippi State's only bowl eligible because that touchdown celebration penalty and the missed extra point by Ole Miss. I like Louisville's offense a lot in this game. I think it's a good matchup for them. I think they'll be able to run the ball. I also like the fact that, Mississippi State turns the ball over a lot. They've had 21 turnovers on the year. So I just don't think they get done. I think Louisville's going to win this game.
All right, so that's going to be a fun one to watch there as the SEC tries to represent during bowl season. Another chance to do that, SEC versus ACC in the Orange Bowl, where Florida hosts Virginia as a 14.5-point favorite. Obviously, this game a little more of interest for Georgia fans due to the fact that Florida will be playing the team that Georgia will open the 2020 season against, also in a neutral site venue of Atlanta at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Before that, for the Wahoos, a chance to do battle with the Gators, as I said before, as a 14.5-point underdog. Mike Griffith, Orange Bowl, Florida, Virginia. What do you think?
The Gators, a 14.5-point favorite over the Cavaliers. I think they'll beat Virginia, but not cover the spread. Florida 30, Virginia 20.
So Mike goes Virginia to keep it close against Florida. Florida team that's been pretty hot against the spread, at least the way it closed out the regular season. So if it's still the same season, if that momentum carries over, that's a dangerous pick. Florida, much to my chagrin, has actually done pretty well against the number as of late. Jeff Sintel, what about you?
Wow, Virginia. So you're going to have a preview there, Georgia fans, a little bit of how Virginia would match up against an SEC team. Here's an early Cliff Notes version. I don't think the Cavaliers are going to match up well at all. I like Florida. Give those points to the Cavaliers. I like Florida to win that game big.
So Jeff comes down on the side of Florida. Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers, they don't like the Gators very much, but do they like them minus the points here in this game? No, they do not, and you always like to see that. 53% take the Cavaliers in the Orange Bowl. You got to imagine Virginia fans, to the extent that there are any, will be loving life down in Miami, a chance to go to a very warm weather locale and a very nice bowl destination. Connor, what do you think about the Orange Bowl?
Virginia, great story this year. Bryce Perkins, one of the most fun players to watch in college football. An awesome quarterback. His final game there at Virginia, they won the Coastal this year for the first time in program history. And having said all that, they're going down there to get their brains kicked in by Florida. I think this Florida team, one, Virginia's offensive line is not very good. Jonathan Grenard, Jabari Zuniga are going to get after and harass Mr. Perkins back there, too. I think Florida knows if they go out and win this game convincingly, they can sort of set themselves up to be hyped up in the offseason as a darling, potential dark horse playoff team going into next year. And we saw Florida playing a similar game like this last year against a Michigan team that a lot of people thought was better than them, and Florida just wiped the floor. I know you don't like giving credit to Dan Mullen, but I think he's going to have his guys ready to play in this game. Give me the Gators.
I have actually begrudgingly given Mullen and Florida some credit for their last late season run after having lost to Georgia. They did not lose their focus whatsoever. They've really been beaten up on teams after that. I don't like giving Mullen credit, But for him, I will give some credit for that. Now, let me kind of come back, and I don't want to beat you guys over the head with this too much, but this is one of those things, once again, where if we trust the about 60% winning percentage over the long haul for preseason higher-ranked teams, this is one of those games where it really shows up. You know, the preseason AP poll voters, for the most part, nailed Florida exactly right. They were projected preseason as number 8. They are currently in the college football playoff ranked at number 9. So for the most part, this is one that the preseason folks kind of got right. Virginia has turned out to be better, at least on paper, than we thought they were before the season began. They were 32nd in the AP preseason bowl based on the number of votes they got, 24th right now in the college football playoff top 25. So here's the question you have to ask yourself, and this is not a rhetorical question. Is Virginia better, or do we just think they're better because of the record? To me, if they are better, you've got to find some wins that justify that. Is it winning at Louisville that proves that for you? Is it winning at North Carolina? Is it beating Georgia Tech? Or, you know, what is the win that proves that Virginia truly is better than we thought they were at the beginning of the season? They lost a game to Notre Dame, 35-20. They closed out the season by beating Virginia Tech. You have to decide for yourself what that means. I don't see enough evidence on this schedule to say that Virginia is actually, 14 spots, or I should say about 8 spots better than we thought they were at the beginning of the season. Florida is certainly validated itself as a top 10 team, much to my chagrin on that. So given that standpoint, 14.5 doesn't seem like too much for me for a Florida team that's been very comfortable in the spot of covering as a favorite as of late. I don't like taking Florida. I'd love nothing more than to make a strong case for the Gators laying an egg in a bowl game. But last year against Michigan in the Peach Bowl, Florida played pretty well. My guess is in their own home state down in Miami, they'll play well again. Give me Florida. That puts the flow on the side of the Gators. Dar, you want to go with the flow?
I'm not. I'm going to take the dog here, and I'm going to take the points in this one. I like Virginia to keep the game close with our quarterback. He's going to be moving the chains with his legs. I think he's going to give Florida some trouble scrambling out of the pocket, and he's going to be able to keep the game close to cover that number. Virginia, just so you know, has covered the number in 11 of their last 15 games versus a team with a winning record.
That's a good number.
I think they add to that in this game. Don't think they have enough juice to win the game. I think Florida has way more talent, but I think they're going to be able to keep it close.
That's a really good number on Virginia against these winning teams. Maybe that is an argument for Virginia being better than we thought they were. Good stuff there from Dari Payro from R.S. Andrews. Let's keep the picks going. Another SEC versus ACC matchup, and to me, I think you got to like that this time of year. It is in Charlotte for the final time ever in the game known as the Belk Bowl. I'm assuming there will be a bowl game in the Queen City next year, but it will not have Belk as its title sponsor moniker. So with that in mind, hey, Griffith, start us off for a little Kentucky versus Virginia Tech talk with the Hokies here as a 2.5-point favorite.
Virginia Tech a 2.5-point favorite. I've got Virginia Tech winning that game and covering the spread 21-17. Legendary defensive coordinator Bud Foster's last game with the Hokies.
So Mike has, for the final time, Bud Foster, Virginia Tech DC. The Hokies giving him a win on his way out the door. Jeff Sintel, what do you think?
Wow. The Belk Bowl. Lots of great memories there in the Belk Bowl. I'm going to go Virginia Tech over Kentucky in that one.
I love the look on Jeff's face, just with the whole idea of even having to pick these games. It's almost like I'm stumping him with a calculus question. I was so interested in the look on his face. Who did he end up picking on that one? He took the favorite there. He does take Virginia Tech. So not a lot of love for Lynn Bowden's side and the Wildcats here right now. How about Dog Nation daily listeners and viewers? There you go. There's a little pro SEC for you. 51% take Kentucky to cover the number as a small dog against Virginia Tech. Once again, Connor, I'm not going to apologize for this. I'm looking forward to the Belk Bowl. I couldn't tell you what day it's being played, but you better believe when it is played, I will be watching Virginia Tech and Kentucky. And I've even got a pretty strong feeling on who wins this game. But before I share my thoughts, I'd love to hear yours.
BA, please don't subject your loved ones to bad bowl games this offseason.
Listen, I love the bowl games.
The Belk Bowl is certainly one of those. Mike mentioned it's Bud Foster's last game. This is also going to be Lynn Bowden's last game. Virginia Tech had a real tough time keeping Bryce Perkins in the pocket and
good
around.
Point.
He
That's
ran
a good point.
He ran all over them to a certain extent. Now Bowden obviously isn't the same passer that Perkins is, but because of that, and it's his last game, and I think he's one of the great Kentucky players of this decade. Give me the Wildcats here.
Yeah.
And don't watch a second of this game.
I will be watching all of it, and I kind of agree with you on Bowden too. And not only is he one of the great recent Wildcats, I think he's been one of the really fun players on, for like sort of those below the fold SEC players. He's been one of the fun guys this league's had. I think that he's been great to watch. I'll be rooting for Kentucky in this game, but I'm going to stick with my guns and the whole idea of preseason prognostications mattering. Virginia Tech preseason 37, Kentucky nowhere to be found. Now this is obviously unranked versus unranked, but we thought Virginia Tech was the better team at the beginning of the season. You get value here with less than a field goal, just a 2.5-point number. That's enough for me to take the Hokies on this one. So give me ACC in the belt. And Dari, that puts the flow on the side of Virginia Tech. Yeah, it puts the flow on the side of Virginia Tech. Which direction you want to go?
Well, I'm not going that route. I'm going to go with SEC and Kentucky Wildcats.
Good.
I think everyone's leaning Virginia Tech because Bud Sauce is retiring and because Kentucky's using a wide receiver quarterback and they're one-dimensional. But guess what? I like the Wildcats here because they've been playing really good defense throughout the season. I think it's going to show up in this game. I think they're going to be able to run the ball and control the clock of Virginia Tech, and they're going to win this game.
I love the pick, Dari. It's opposite side of mine, but it's a very, very strong opinion. I'm always attracted to people who have strong plays this time of year. It's one of the reasons why we invite folks to watch and listen in when we make our picks. You can kind of join the consensus and decide if you want to go with the flow there as well. And certainly Dari's been good this year with his picks for the entirety of the season. That's a very strong play there on Virginia Tech and Kentucky. Let's go to New Year's Day now, some of the better games. Let's give you a Citrus Bowl here for a moment between Michigan and Alabama. Why don't you start us off on that one, Mike Griffith, as the Crimson Tide plays not just outside the college football playoff for the first time in its 5-year history, but also outside the New Year's Six there as well in a spot here against the Michigan Wolverines. What do you think about that one, Mike?
Alabama, a 7-point favorite. All the Alabama receivers say they're going to play in this game. I think that's good news for the Tide. I think they will destroy Michigan 45-13. Alabama over Michigan in the Citrus Bowl.
So he is taking the Alabama Crimson Tide there as the 7-point favorite. Jeff Sintel, what do you think?
Ooh, I like this game. This might be one of the most pageantry they're going to try and play up. This is one of the most amazing New Year's Six bowl games left. You got Michigan, you got Alabama. I hear those Alabama wide receivers are all going to play in this game, and that's why I like Alabama big over those Wolverines.
Alabama as well for Jeff Sintel. How about Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers? How you feeling about the Citrus Bowl? 74%, almost a 3-1 margin. Take Alabama over Michigan. That seems like the right side for me, but Connor Riley, I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
You know what happened the last time Alabama played a team from Michigan in Orlando?
Yeah, it's been a long time ago, but they walloped Michigan State.
Yeah,
correct?
it was 49-7, and I think they're still trying to get the bits of Michigan State's skull off the field there. Michigan in its last couple of bowl games against SEC teams, against South Carolina 2 years ago, lost as a big favorite. Last year against Florida in the Peach Bowl, lost as a big favorite. This time they're an underdog, and guess what? They're going to lose by a lot. This Alabama team, I think they're going to be motivated. I think Saban, maybe unlike Kirby Smart, has his guys buying in, ready to go in this game. Only 2 guys sitting out, Trayvon Diggs and Terrell Lewis. You know, all those offensive skill players, they're going to be back. Mac Jones, I think he's going to want to prove something in this game, show, hey, maybe I can be the starting quarterback here at Alabama next year. Because of all that, give me the Crimson Tide by a whole lot.
Yeah, this is one of those things where to even see Alabama as a 7-point favorite, and I realize you're going to say, well, they haven't beaten anybody all year long. Michigan, by comparison, actually has a decent collection of wins. They walloped Notre Dame, and they beat up on Wisconsin. That kind of looks like a better win now. So from a resume standpoint, Michigan's probably done more this season than Alabama has. But pushing that aside, to go back to kind of our whole thought about where we were at the beginning of the season, if these two teams have played in week 1, there is no way Alabama's only a 7-point favorite over Michigan. There's no way. So have you downgraded your opinion of Alabama that much over the course of a year that you suddenly think they are far less in comparison to Michigan than I know you would have? Had these two teams played in Dallas to start the season in one of these kind of non-conference neutral site games? Be very careful here falling in love with the recency bias that suddenly Alabama's not good anymore because it lost at Auburn in a hostile road environment against a truly elite defense. Alabama's still better than Michigan. 7 points here, I think, is a bargain. People are looking for those after Christmas sales. This is one. Get yourself some money here by taking Alabama minus the 7. That puts the flow on the side of the Crimson Tide. And Dari, one of the things we've come to expect from you is We know you are going on the flow on this one, right?
Yes, most definitely. I'm going to take some Tide. I think they easily cover this game. They're going to be pissed off that they're not playing in the playoffs. You know, Saban's good about using that and getting these players to actually care and demonstrate, you know, and release that frustration and pain and everything they have on that field. I think it's going to unload on Michigan. You already have drama of Harbaugh trying to beg players to not sit out this game for the draft and to actually play and finish what we started type call, and it's not working. I think they're going to get destroyed in this game. Whenever they're in these big games, they clam up. One stat also coming in here is Alabama is 6-1 against the spread in their last 7 games against Big Ten opponents.
Oh, that's a very, very interesting number to think about there. And do you agree with me that if this was a Week 1 game in another neutral site venue, in fact, let's just say it was in Orlando in Week 1, that's the kind of place that could typically host a game like this, I think Alabama's a 14-point favorite at least against Michigan there in that spot. I mean, do you agree with me that we see this game, or at least the public at large sees this game as closer now than it would have seen it if the game was played August 31st instead of January 1st?
Yeah, I would see that. I would definitely see Alabama at least, you know, double-digit favorite beginning of the year.
Yeah, so pretty interesting stuff there from the Citrus Bowl. I actually think this is one of the more entertaining bowl games, just given the fact that Harbaugh needs a big win. Alabama, for all the reasons that Connor mentioned, has some motivation here or there as well, and it's just these two huge, gigantic kind of major names. I think the Citrus Bowl is actually pretty fun. Another Big Ten versus SEC matchup is also in the state of Florida. It's the Outback Bowl between PJ Fleck's Minnesota Golden Gophers and Gus Malzahn's Auburn Tigers. Auburn, 7.5-point favorite here in this spot. Mike Griffith, how about your thoughts on the Outback Bowl?
A 7.5-point favorite over Minnesota. You know, Minnesota was a good story with P.J. Fleck, but I don't think they've got the guns to stay with the Tigers. I got Auburn winning this game 27-17 over the Golden Gophers.
So he goes Auburn in the Outback Bowl there. Jeff Sintel, what about you?
Ooh, I like that line. I like Auburn to cover that spread of 7 points against the Gophers.
All right, it is also Auburn for Jeff Sintel there as well. Dog Nation Daily, listeners and viewers, your thoughts on all of this? 68% also take Auburn, so a lot of Auburn love here at the moment. Connor, you want to go with the flow and take Auburn?
I do, because this Minnesota team has been a great story this year, but in their last game out, they really struggled against a physical Wisconsin team, and I think this Auburn team reminds me of a more physical version, a bigger, faster, stronger version of Wisconsin. Because of that, I think they're going to struggle to score points. I don't know how much Auburn is going to score in this game, but I don't see Minnesota scoring a whole lot of points, and I see Auburn doing just enough here to cover the 7.5. That half point gives me some pause into picking Minnesota, but I just think Minnesota's offense is really going to struggle to do much of anything against Auburn.
I've really been pushing this idea of preseason compared to a current evaluation of teams. There's a huge gap in between how we view Auburn, Minnesota now as opposed to before the season began. We currently see this as number 12 Auburn versus number 18 Minnesota. The preseason saw this as 16 Auburn, 39 Minnesota. So for the most part, the AP poll voters got Auburn right. They had them 16 at the beginning of the season. They're 12 now. You're not too far off the pace, although maybe by the virtue of the Iron Bowl win, a little bit better on the side of Auburn. However, huge gap between Minnesota. Now, I think one of the things you have to be careful about is I do think that gap and that perception gap is baked into this point spread already. The more talented team, Auburn, favored over the maybe at times more impressive resume team in Minnesota, because Minnesota did have a couple nice wins early before faltering late. However, the gap in perception is still enough for me to take Auburn here, minus the 7.5, and that puts the flow on the side of the Tigers. Dar, you want to go with the flow and take Auburn?
Just so you know, Auburn's been a moneymaker this year.
Yeah.
They're 9-3 against the spread. However, I'm going to take Minnesota. I'm not going with the flow, and I'm going to take the points. Auburn's a more talented team. You know, they're definitely going to win this game. You know, but I like Minnesota's ability to make plays in the passing game downfield. I think you're going to see that in this game. It really didn't happen in the Wisconsin game because of the weather. I put a lot of that on the snow. but I think they're going to be able to score some points here and keep this game close. I think it's going to be a really good game to watch. And the Gophers are 6-2 against the spread in their last 8 games as an underdog.
That's a very, very interesting thing to think about. Pretty strong pick there from Dari Payro. Really good information to back that up. Let's head to Pasadena, California now, where it's a traditional Rose Bowl, and you always like to see that. Big Ten runner-up Wisconsin against the Pac-12 champion Oregon. The Badgers here are a 3-point favorite after having lost their last game to Ohio State. Oregon riding high after a win over the Utah Utes. This is a pretty fun game all the way around, and Mike Griffith, you can start us off.
Rose Bowl, Oregon and Wisconsin. Badgers a 3-point favorite over the Ducks. I like the Ducks in this game. I think the Ducks are really good. Oregon wins this game 29-24.
So it is Ducks for Mike Griffith. Jeff Sintel, how about you?
Now, I wish I would know whether that's whiskey that played Ohio State the first time or whiskey that played Ohio State the second time. Still, I think Jonathan Taylor's going to play in that game, the pageantry of the Rose Bowl. I like Wisconsin in that game to cover the spread.
It is whiskey for Mr. Sintel. Split decision once again. Dog Nation Daily, listeners and viewers, 55% take Wisconsin here. So expectations for a close game from our Dog Nation Daily audience. And Connor, I think that even you would agree this is actually a pretty fun bowl game. Classic Rose Bowl, beautiful venue, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the game.
First of all, is there any Rose Bowl you're not looking forward to seeing?
Of course, always.
So I actually have a pretty good feeling about this game. Wisconsin, what do we know about them? They're a physical team,
Yeah.
They play good defense, and they want to stop the run. Who does that sound a lot like?
Utah.
It sounds exactly a lot like Utah. I think this Oregon team is going to follow a similar recipe. They have better athletes, better overall quote-unquote talent than the Wisconsin team. And I think they're going to ride that not just to a cover, but to an outright win. This is Justin Herbert's last game. I think this would mean a lot to him and to his legacy to go out on top as a Rose Bowl champion and sort of resurrect Oregon after that little dip it took from after the Marcus Mariota era. And I think, with some of the guys they have coming in at the future there at Oregon, this is something similar to what Florida is going to do with Virginia. They can use this game as a launching point into next year. Because of all that, quack, quack, give me the Ducks.
All right, so this is one of those where I'm going to kind of defy my own logic for a moment, but try to follow my reasoning for doing so. Once again, huge gap in terms of preseason thoughts and now current season thoughts on these two teams. In the preseason, we saw this as number 11 Oregon versus number 19 Wisconsin. Pretty wide gap in favor of the Ducks. Now we see it as a 6 versus 8 matchup, still favoring Oregon, but a lot closer in terms of their overall ranking. So once again, I'm going to ask the question I've been asking is, well, if we were that wrong about Wisconsin, moving them closer to Oregon, on what basis are we doing that? And this is a question that's not rhetorical. This is a question I think has an actual answer here. I think when you look at the overall results and resume for Wisconsin, you see a reason to justifiably think higher of them now than you did at the beginning of the season. This is a team, for instance, that beat Michigan earlier in the year, 35-14. This is a team that kept it relatively close, at least with inside the Vegas number, against Ohio State to close out the season. Beat Minnesota 38-17. Beat a pretty good Iowa team 24-22. This is a team that's actually collected a decent number of resume-building wins, and its most recent game showed at least belonged on the field with Ohio State. So from that standpoint, the preseason projection on Wisconsin, I'm going to say was wrong, and now the closer spread matters. And as a 3-point favorite, worth taking a flyer on the Badgers here, at least in my mind, because of how stout the defense can be. So give me Wisconsin. I have no idea for whom that puts the flow, because I think I've heard picks on both sides. It is a Wisconsin that does have the flow. Dari, you want to go with the flow and take the Big Ten runner-up?
Yes, give me Bucky the Badger. This should be a good game. Will it be a defensive battle or a display of offensive firepower? Both these teams can play both types of games, so it'll be really interesting to see how the game flow plays out. Regardless of it, I think this is going to be a really close game, a classic Rose Bowl. I wish it was under 3, 2.5, but I'm going to take the Badgers here, and I think they're going to get it done.
All right, one final pick for us. Here's part of Go With The Flow presented by R.S. Andrews for both our show and our season. It is the over-under for the Sugar Bowl, 41.5. It rests with the Dogs and the Baylor Bears. And I don't have the numbers to back this up, but I'm going to ask the question anyway. I wonder how many bowl games have a lower total than this 41.5. There can't be too many where there's less expectations for points than these two kind of defensive-minded teams. But with that in mind, Mike Griffith, I will let you begin things. Your thoughts on the total for the Sugar Bowl?
The over-under, 41.5 points. I've got it at 45. I'm going to say take the over. Georgia's going to have to throw that ball around.
So Mike goes over for the Sugar Bowl after unders have been a very popular play for Georgia this season. And Jeff Sintel, what do you think?
Man, I think the Vegas odd makers are trying to say something there. I don't know if they knew about those Georgia offensive line defections or not. Still think that the Baylor football team and the Georgia Bulldogs football team go over that 41.5 point total.
Boy, the holiday spirit really is taking over. Jeff and Mike both going over here in this spot. Dog Nation daily listeners and viewers prone to take the over pretty much all season long. 60% take this one, given the fact that it's a low number. A little easier to understand, but thus far we are clean sweep on the over. The eggnog apparently already freely flowing around the Dog Nation World Headquarters Studios. Connor, what do you think about that?
I'm here to restore some balance and some order to the force here. You know, Georgia this year in Power 5 against Power 5 opponents, do you know what the record was in over-unders? Do you know how many times the under hit?
I believe they went over 2 of those 10 times.
They are 9-2 on the under. The 2 times Tennessee, which they needed a defensive touchdown, and Georgia Tech, which doesn't even really count as a Power 5 opponent this year.
Yeah.
Having said all that, Baylor's defense is very, very good. Georgia's defense is very, very good. As Dari brought up earlier, Charlie Brewer, big question mark going into this game with a concussion. Georgia's offensive line, even bigger question mark because you're going to be without 3 starters. 41.5 points is not a lot of points, and I'm still taking the under. I don't see a whole lot of points in this game at all.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I was sitting, as you were talking, Connor, I was sitting here trying to think, how low would this number have to be before I wouldn't just sort of blindly rubber stamp the under? It would have to be a good bit below 41.5 because I'm literally taking this without giving much thought to it. The only contrarian argument I can make is that sometimes bowl games are sort of a life unto themselves, and you could occasionally get like a really silly game where like it just doesn't have any semblance of reality to it whatsoever. There's always the possibility that happens in a bowl game, but that is not anywhere even close to the most likely thing to occur. The most likely thing to occur is these two defensive-minded teams play a defensive-minded game. Dari, I see this one going under as well. Flow on the side of the over. You want to go with the flow and take the over.
I mean, I want to, but I'm not. I'm going to take the under. I want to take the over, 41.5. It's like I'm calculating, like, what are the scores that can get there. But I just think it's going to be an under. I think it's going to be a defensive game. I think there's a lot of clock control, punting, field goals, and I think that's going to be a slow game.
It is indeed going to be a slow game. Obviously, I've already made my thoughts that I think it may be a game that Georgia has a hard time winning, but Dari feels a lot more confident about that. So on this one, we kind of hope Dari's right. And Dari, as we get ready to sort of sign off for this edition of Go With The Flow presented by R.S. Andrews, it's been a really fun edition of the program here this season. I just wanted to say thank you personally for sharing so much of your time with us and really sharing some really great picks. I think your record this season has been pretty phenomenal. And we just appreciate R.S. Andrews allowing us to have so much fun and talk some college football, make some picks, and kind of bust each other's chops a little bit. That's just been a really fun thing to be able to do for me personally. I know Connor feels the same way. Jeff and Mike, if they were here, would be sharing the same sentiments. So thanks so much for making Go With The Flow presented by R.S. Andrews so much fun to do each and every week.
Yeah, definitely. It's been fun, for me as well. It's been, it's always great to talk football, and hopefully next year I can improve on my games, and who knows? Maybe I can make up some ground on Connor and overtake him for the season total this year. We'll have to see.
I like the idea of that. We'll definitely keep the tally going and see how that plays out. So, Dari, great stuff. Hope you enjoy your holiday season, and we'll let you watch some of these football games, and then look forward to getting a chance to speak to you soon.
You too.
Hey,
thanks, guys.
Great stuff there from Dari Payo from R.S. Andrews. Really good friends of ours here at Dog Nation. Just fun-loving folks over there. They've been with us on a lot of our trips we've been on, Dog Nation Invasions and things like that. Nobody has more fun talking college football. It's part of their whole idea. They say that they like to deliver smiles. They've been delivering smiles. Every story that gets told about R.S. Andrews showing up on time, doing the work that's promised for the price that's promised, it's part of their thing. They just like good times and folks smiling and having a good time, and so that's obviously why Dari and the team there as a part of our Go With The Flow here. And, of course, if you check them out on rsandrews.com, when you're facing an air, heating, plumbing, or electric issue, you'll find out the same thing for yourself. It's rsandrews.com. Also, quick reminder here, not just for bowl season, but as you're heading towards the NFL playoffs, things like that, if you want to get some action down, my friends at MyBookie can make that possible. When you use the promo code DogNation, you can get a big first deposit bonus. Both up to $1,000, you can get your first deposit doubled, but you've got to use the promo code DogNation. So quick, simple instruction. Find MyBookie online. Just type it into your browser, and the internet will do the work for you. Then when you get there, use the promo code DogNation, get the big first deposit bonus, and then after that, you play, you win, you get paid. It's as simple as that with my friends at MyBookie. Huge thanks for you being with us all season long here on Go With The Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews. Good luck with your picks. Enjoy the bowl season, and we'll talk to you back here again very soon.